good, man? Damn. Ayokunu here, host of the 4 Man Up podcast, and I'm joined by my brothers,
Leondre,
Marvin,
Korede.
And today we're going to be discussing the world of fatherhood. We're going to be touching on this topic of father and son. I have 3 phenomenal questions that are going to bring an introspective perspective to our experience as sons, and hopefully bring some value to you as an audience, and hopefully start up a conversation and change a narrative of how fathers relate with sons, and hopefully address some wounds and bring healing and just even comfort and assurance that we're not alone in this area of growth in fatherhood. So I want to thank you guys for being here, number one. Thank you for being here, man. Hope you guys are blessed. You good?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Good pleasure.
Well fed, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah. When a man is hungry and satisfied, that's 101 sorted, mate. So today, guys, I want to touch on 3 questions, and we'll try to get everyone to answer it as concise as possible. We might, flow into the next one, but this is an area that's very dear to me. Soon to be father, gang. You know what I'm saying? Big up my wife Susan, doing all the hard work. Me, I just shot and I scored. She's carrying. You know what I'm saying, man? So this area is very interesting area, and I can't even lie. Like, probably about 9 weeks left now. So what's that? 7 months, I think. In total. So like, it's been, when people ask me like my journey into like, oh, you're gonna become a father, like, how does it feel? Like, it's been a very much emotional last 7 months, where I've slowly been realizing that I'm going to become a father. But then it's just been emotional more from the perspective of like, wow, like this is really happening. And I'm a lot more apparent about, where I need to become better, or what I want to show my soon to be son, what it means to be a man. So when I first heard, there was a drive, like, okay, let's go hard, make the money, do the whatever. And then slowly there was a much more catching up of like, okay, how do you actually feel? You know what I mean? So there was a 2-sided paradigm where I was like, when I used the word excited and also scared, but my fear wasn't like, oh, I was scared. It was a scared of like, this is something brand new that there's not enough textbook, enough answers, or anything that's going to really make me quote unquote ready to be there. It's something you have to learn when you get there. Like, you understand. So that whole unknown or something new, and like, I'm gonna see how I show up when I show up. You know what I mean? And as a man, I don't like that. I want to be in control. I want to know. I want to show up. I want to be confident. Like, I've done it before. I can smash it again. So I'm excited, and I'm like, whew, yeah. And I was at Men's Monday, and she was describing. Our teacher was describing about identity as a man, and she presented these questions to us in regards to our relationship with our father, that I think is really befitting for all of us to share here. And even the little that I've shared, I think sometimes, even if I'm honest about the fear part, where I'm like, it's something new, there's also a fear of like, the unaddressed areas of me being a son, and how that journey was like with my dad. And so when she asked the first question, which is, I will say to you guys, how have you experienced your father-son bond? Obviously, that question already implied that there's supposed to be a bond. And she gave an example of like, has your father ever shared anything about himself personally? And I was like, no. What problems he wrestled with? No. You know what I mean? What it means to be a man? I'll say no, not verbally, but maybe, by action. So, to ask you guys, like, how have you, experienced a father-son bond? Did you ever hear your dad share with you weakness? Did you see him cry? You know what I'm saying? Did he tell you this is what it means to be a man? And if not, was there any other avenue for that? Anybody can go, open floor.
Right, cool. So for me, I think my first experience of a father-son bond happened a lot later in life. My dad didn't grow up with him in the house. He left when I was around 4. Didn't see him again till I was about 10 or 11. But it wasn't necessarily, there was no kind of bond. It was kind of a transactional thing. We see him on a Saturday, He does his shift, then we go back home. There's not really deep conversations. Birthdays come around, Dad, I'd like a PlayStation. He might get you a GameCube, but it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you know, getting the Sega or something, but I tried, you know. But no, you know, he did try. He'd get us stuff here and there. So, but it was very transactional until about, I say 19, 18, when, all right, cool. Now, a lot of the questions maybe that I had, I maybe felt confident enough to ask him. And that's, I feel, when we started talking about, okay, some form of rap, Dad, like, I started asking about past things. How did you feel when it happened and you and Mum got divorced, or you and Mum split up? What happened? And da-da-da. And it's funny because he didn't give me, I feel like when I was asking those questions, for me, that bond experience was, I expected certain answers, which I didn't even get, if I'm honest. There was, I don't know if it's a man thing, but there was some disconnect in the emotional aspect of it. Just like, oh, this happened, you know, and you know, it happens. But he did give his perspective. So that's the first time I started experiencing kind of that father-son bond in terms of him showing his, you know what, I failed in this area, I should have done this better. But in other areas, not so much. But he definitely shared that. And then from there, gave his, at different points, he's definitely said, this is what it is to be a man. But my clash with it is that growing up with my mum, and even just growing up and having certain perspectives on manhood, there was a kind of a clash in perspective. Some of his perspectives were ones I just didn't agree with in terms of what he thought a man is and how a man should be. And I just didn't see it as practical, some of them. But some of them, they were. So, yeah, I had that opportunity, but I was definitely a lot older.
So when you say the opportunity, then was this just maybe only a one-time conversation or not an ongoing one?
Yeah, it wasn't an ongoing one. I don't think that I haven't had that kind of ongoing father-son, we talk every day vibe. Nah, it's a one-off conversation here and there where we've had moments of experiencing that bond. But then the moment comes, it feels great in the moment, and then we're back to, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, how does that make you feel? Because I think, because it's almost as if like you're getting drips and dabs, or you're getting a good taster, and then it's like there's no main course. Or this.
No main course. It's like you're walking through
appetizer.
Hey, you're walking through Westfield. You get the small plates, and then with the small, you give you the small. Literally,
Costco setting.
Costco, and it's cold sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So literally, I think, how does it feel? I think it hurt a lot, and I think I said this before on some of the other photo men gatherings we've had, but I didn't realize how much it hurt or how much I needed it until my kind of late teens, older years. I remember first crying about it when I was like 20, and I think my pastor asked me something like, if you had one thing you could ask your dad, or one thing you wanted to know, like, and I think he wasn't even asking me, he was asking someone else. Wow. But I was like deep in the conversation because I was like, that's me. Like I needed to ask my dad this, and I didn't get that. So how did it make me feel? It made me feel kind of, definitely a rejection piece there. Yeah. There was definitely a rejection piece there, big time. It definitely made me feel like I actually missed out on something. So, you know, I've got half brothers and half sisters, and I remember, like, my half brother, he's a footballer now. He's a scholar for QPR. I remember seeing my dad take him to all the football matches, see him take him to training early morning, 6 a.m., seeing him take him to all these different things. I remember thinking, Dad, I had trials, he didn't come to one. And like, he came to one match one time, I remember, and I scored that game. I remember looking at him like, Dad, I scored, he runs on the pitch, like, we're all happy. But I remember, again, it was a moment. Do you know what I mean? I had so many matches, a full season, years before that he didn't come to. And I remember him even saying that he wishes he'd had that chance, he'd done a bit more, even just on that side, sports side and stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot packaged in terms of that, in terms of how it made me feel. So yeah, I'd say rejected in one piece, don't want to call it unfulfilled in a way in terms of that relationship. Almost this yearning of what could it have been? You know, like what could it have been? Like what if it was this? Because now we do have a relationship. But what could it have been if this had started a lot earlier? You know, or not if we'd been able to go a bit deeper. So yeah, that's what I would say.
No, that's it, man. Yeah. That's the Korede.
Yeah. Something like you experienced. My biological father, and me calling him that already frames the conversation. But my biological father, he was with us until I was about 5. Then for whatever reason, he decided to leave and he left. For the next few years, he would then, come every now and again to take us to the park. Every now and again, buy us McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. But after a while, it had been decided in our family that, okay, that was no longer something that we wanted to experience, because those situations, those moments in our memory were not as pleasant as they ought to have been. And unfortunately, boundaries were crossed, which meant that, okay, that now has to be limited even more now. Which I think is a difficult decision for any family to make. But that's how that was. Fortunately though, and so through the years, every now and again, he pops around. One thing to be true about is that he would give whatever little he had financially. And that now sort of speaks to this idea that men believe they're to provide. But whatever little he had, even though it wouldn't go anywhere near covering all of the bills or even half of the bills, but any little he had, he would try to provide. But of course, there's no amount of money a father can give that will make up for the presence he's supposed to play in a particular person's life. Fortunately though, by God's grace, I had somebody else as a father figure or mentor in my life. And as I've alluded to in other places, the idea of people looking at me and through the years saying, oh, you're wise beyond your years, is because I had that father figure, who again is my mentor, spiritual father, Bishop Sunday Okola, who was able to be that kind of role model for me. So now there's 2 father figures, so to speak, a physical one and a spiritual one to speak of. So when it comes to the question, as an example, did any of these 2 share any sort of of their vulnerabilities or their weaknesses or their misgivings or their sort of shortcomings and things like that? I think with my biological father, not so much, though he always alluded and communicated that we must excel beyond where he went, always. And even from a very young age, his thing was always, you guys will go and graduate university. And as I was familiar with in my context, make examples of people in our church community, Nigerian community. You see this person's daughter's getting, engaged, you will go on to get married. This person is graduated university. Look at all your peers. You go and do likewise. So it was always a kind of encouragement to go beyond, but never a look at my mistakes. Not in an explicit vulnerable sense. With my spiritual father, as you can imagine, God used him greatly, and I think he was there for me in various ways. But one particular way that stuck with me was more when I was having some anger issues, and I remember I was angry at my brother, picked up a chair and threw it at the wall. Nobody would expect this of me looking at me today. But yeah, and I was the oldest as well. And so he said to me, he opened up Ecclesiastes, as a spiritual father probably would. Ecclesiastes, and it said, anger, I think it was Ecclesiastes, anger resides in the laps of fools. And he turned to me, he said, are you a fool? I looked at him, I said, no, I'm not a fool. And I don't want to be a fool. And that kind of framed the pursuit for wisdom in my life. I think the other thing I would say is, my story is a little bit different in that there are a lot of people who are felt that they needed to learn from the mistakes of their fathers, and their fathers had to be vulnerable with them in a particular way. But for me, that's kind of more where my mother came in. And because of the relationship with my father, I kind of learned how not to go about things and what not to do through the voice of a woman, which was my mother. And so seeing how that affected her, that more kind of influenced me growing up. So I think, yeah, that was more my story.
Wow, that's powerful, man. Because like essentially one could say there hasn't been a bond there, for you to actually, develop or actually,
Not so much. I mean, with my spiritual father, yes. But yeah. I think that the funniest part about it is that there were people who would have sworn to me that, oh, you must be, you're a good example of masculinity. You must have, your parents must be pastors or something like that, or that kind of thing. But yeah,
no, it's dope because obviously we're seeing where somebody else has stepped up. Because even with what people are saying about you, it's just evidence of the fruit of Bishop. In your life,
and mum, of course,
and your mum, of course, sorry. But then it's just because obviously just because I'm centering on the father-son dynamic.
Yes, yeah.
Then it's just like it's interesting that obviously with biological dad, like you said, anything that you can say that was good that he kind of emphasized had everything to do with actions.
Sure.
Which being a smart man that you are, you could easily flip back and be like, "But Dad, it's once in a while." To the point where you had to make a difficult choice because it wasn't healthy anymore. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So it's almost as if like, we can probably extend grace to be like, maybe he was just doing what he could do in his own context and his own remit of what he thought he could do. For whatever reason he chose to do what he did. There's also then how that can still be hampered by you saying exceed greater than me, do this. Like a lot of stuff was what you would do, where it's just like, okay, but I would probably be able to receive that more if I actually saw it done to me. You know what I mean? Kind of thing, yeah. Because then, it would be interesting to know if you now have a pushback towards you being defined by what you do, or are you more aggressively trying to be more present? Did those moments steer you towards being overly focused on what you produce as a man, or overly focused on you making sure that you're present as a man? You know what I mean, kind of thing. So I don't know if you have any answers to those two questions.
So him being more action, with the words kind of seeming more action oriented, am I more aggressive about being about it and being action oriented? Or I think for me, for certain, I think I've tried to do the hard work, and I think that's where the balance of mum comes in as well. I've tried to do the hard work internally, and I add this to it. What I would add to it is this: mum has always, and I appreciate we're focusing on fathers and sons, but mum has always kind of centered, as any Nigerian young person or young woman would probably be aware, you need to learn to cook for your husband. But with us as sons, it was always, you need to do this because you're going to be a father one day. You're going to be a husband. Help in the kitchen because you're going to be a husband, et cetera, et cetera. And so internally, throughout the years, it's always been, how can I be the ultimate husband to my wife and the ultimate father to my kids? That's always been my drive, so to speak. And so I wouldn't say that I was ever consciously thinking, well, my biological father said many years ago. It was never really that, but it was always, okay, the constant reinforcement that mum is giving me now, plus the good and the bad example of how to be a father that I had before me, how can I be the ultimate father?
Okay, cool.
Under the grace of God, of course.
Yeah, that's powerful, because essentially it means Bishop did what he did and mum did what she did, and that kind of gave you a holistic picture, though biological wasn't in the picture. So it's good because obviously you had that environment that allowed you to healthily respond to something that you rightfully needed as a son, that was able to get from two paradigms. And I think the mum thing I can relate to as well, because my mum's a caterer. She raised 3 boys, by force, what I'm saying. She was on this thing of where you will learn how to clean the house, you learn how to cook, She was on this, and I think for her, once again, because she's a very industrious, Nigerian woman, I think for her, it helped all of us have a level of domestic ability whereby now, I'm sure Susan will tell all of you guys she's benefiting from, and hopefully for Lamry and my other brothers, they're about to benefit from, where it's just like, okay, we've now been able to be a man that's able to, speak or meet a woman's need that maybe even our own dads might not have been aware of, because they were just doing what they could do in their own thing. Do you get what I'm saying, kind of thing? So maybe what my mum would teach me about what a woman will need from a man will totally different from what my dad will think. Or, you guys get what I'm saying, kind of thing here? So I think that was really healthy, because you had mum reinforcement, and then you had Bishops, and then together, it builds that, holistic picture. So, to throw the question to you, my bro, how have you experienced
It's
your-
interesting. I think my experience is very similar to Marvin's in the sense of my dad left when I was young, so I was 2 years old. So I have no recollection of living with him, other than like what I've been told. So he left and went to Canada. So it was completely, other side of the world kind of thing. So I remember being told when I was younger, I would see I'll be at my grandparents' house or his parents' house. There'll be like a plane, and I'll be opening the window, looking up like his daddy on the plane, and my grandma would be like, no, he's not, that kind of thing. Like he's not on that plane.
He's not on that plane.
Kind of thing. But then we, from the age of 5, I had to go and see him like every other year. Kind of thing. But then again, it was very transactional. In the sense of, okay, we're gonna go and watch the Blue Jays play baseball. I'm gonna buy you some Jordans. We're gonna do this. And when you're young, you think, oh yeah, it's great. Okay, you want a PS2? A PS1 them times? Yeah. You know what I mean? It was so, but then I think where I can really relate to what Marvin's saying is, so my dad had other children, he got married. So him and my mum were never married. They were young. So when my mum was 16, my dad was 19. So they were mad young. So they lived together for a couple of years. So when he went to Canada, he actually got married to a girl that my mum knew. So you went all the way to Canada and you met someone from England, you know what I mean? And then got married, had children, you know what I mean? So then I think the first time I went, I think it was just my stepmom. But then the next time there were siblings in it. And that was weird because it was just a case of, it's gone from, okay, yeah, it's me and my dad doing stuff. Now I'm having to share him with these people who are my siblings, but I don't really know you. You know what I mean? But my dad was very intentional about me having a relationship with them. But that's before the days of WhatsApp and all that kind of thing, So how much of a relationship are you gonna have, in the mid-90s? And I think what built up that bitterness and anger and frustration in me, my youngest sister, or they're all younger, the one that comes after me, she was a sick footballer. Like really, really good. You know what I mean? I was also a sick footballer. But then was
Just wanted to clarify.
But then the story makes sense. As like, I also was like, nah, but Dad's taking a training. Dad's, we're just on our way to the other side of the country. We're just on our way to the United States because she's got a tournament. So he's all of that ferrying, all of that stuff, where I'm in England, trials for Charlton, trials for QPR, and it's my coaches who are stepping in and playing that role. When I'm playing cricket for London, I've got to endure being in a car with this middle-class white family and pretending I'm liking the music they're listening to, or I'm into that, when I could have been with my dad listening to some Buju on our way to cricket. You know what I mean? So there was that level of frustration and bitterness of, you've got this new family in Canada. What is it about me that you couldn't do this with me?
That's real.
In the UK.
That's real.
You know what I mean? What's wrong with me that you had to go? And obviously that wasn't the reality. The reality was he got in a bit of trouble. My grandparents shipped him off, you know what I mean? And then he happened to start a new life. But it was just, what is it about me that everything I'm seeing when I come in the summer, which looks like, perfection, it looks like, it looks like the Cosbys, it looks like Fresh Prince. And then this UK odd job boy comes in for 4 to 6 weeks to kind of try and fit in somehow. So to answer the question, there wasn't really a bond growing up. I remember like my grandma and her sister saying to me, why don't you write to him? I said, who does that? I'm not writing a letter to my dad. That is so long. So it was just purely a transactional relationship. And then like what I was saying earlier off air, it got to the point that as I got older and, we had a few conversations and I grew to have a really good relationship with my stepmom. And then when I wasn't happy with kind of like how things were with my dad, she would listen and she would be kind of like the mediator and kind of like pass things on. And I remember one time, this is when I knew that, this ain't gonna work. So I can't remember what I was frustrated, annoyed about. So then we went somewhere, it was just me and him. The car journey was completely silent because obviously I've told my stepmom I'm vexed about something. And then on the way back, we went to like the equivalent of like JD, innit? And then for him, the answer was, okay, what trainers are you on? Kind of thing. And I think these times, maybe I was about a teenager these times. And yeah, I'm happy I got a pair of crepes. But at the same time, I'm thinking, so this is the level of it. But then in years to come, like when I've been married, it's been difficult to kind of have those conversations. Because now in my head, I'm like, no, let's just keep it transactional. Let's just talk about football. Let's talk about the Prem. Let's talk about how grandma's doing. Let's talk about these kind of, like, let's not get into, because yeah, it's easier. And sometimes I think to myself, no, but you've got to overcome that, Leondre, innit? You know, your dad's here making an effort now. But for me, it's like, it's long. It's too much of an effort. But then, obviously, the last thing I want to happen, God forbid something happens to one of us, and our relationship is still just this surface level, you know, like my dad doesn't really know me. I don't really know my dad. That's the reality. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say the journey hasn't ever been something that's where we've really, really bonded. Yeah, we have a love of football, like a genuine love of football. And there's no time we talk. Now we may talk on average every couple of weeks, but where football doesn't come up. But it dominates the conversation so much that there isn't the opportunity to actually, okay, Dad, genuinely, like, how are you doing? Because he's gone through divorce now, you know what I mean? So he's like living a very different life, you know, early 50s, you know, he's living a life he was living when he was early 20s without saying too much, you know what I mean? But it's just, yeah, I'm telling you, bro. And then it's like, I feel like, okay, how can we get to a place where I can be like, my dad's not a Christian as well. Even though he visits churches, but he's not a Christian. But I was like, okay, like, Dad, genuinely, like, how are you feeling? Then I have to ask myself as well, like, Leondre, do you genuinely care about your dad's soul?
Oh, yeah.
Right,
good question.
By the way you conduct yourself. Not that I'm doing anything wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you, bro.
But
I'm hearing you.
There's a neutral position rather than, this is my dad and I genuinely care about his soul. So I'm going to have certain conversations, I'm going to do certain things. And I have to continually chastise and rebuke myself. In all honesty, the way I behave is not of someone who cares about his soul in eternity. You know what I mean? So that's my challenge, is how do I overcome that? You know what I mean?
That's powerful. No, I like how you put that in there, because it's almost as if now you being a believer has put a demand on how you even, you know, honor that relationship that you have with your father, whereby it's no longer, well, he wasn't X, Y, and Z, therefore he doesn't deserve to have bonding with now. God's almost like put an onus on you to initiate something that maybe he doesn't have the capacity to initiate when it comes to having those conversations, which could, you know, which is what I believe the process of forgiveness and healing will actually look like, you know what I mean? Which I think is powerful now, because now you're older and you are a father now and you're at that stage now, it just shows you how much, like, you know, as much as we could probably all sit here, because I don't know, I can't lie, for me, this is proper awkward now, because I didn't realise all your dad's left at a young age, because now I'm just like, I'm like, yo!
You're one man up, bro.
I'm just like, man up here thinking, well, you know, and just hearing all of your different scenarios and things, but in each scenario and area, like somebody or something has stepped up to kind of like, you know what I mean? And just hearing how you responded to it, obviously you guys have similar ones, how you it's just like, I'm just like, wow. Then if anything for me now, it's almost like, you know, your question, like, do you care about your dad's soccer? My dad's not said either. And then also looking at the fact of, like, you know, like, even on your end, like, have you initiated, because your dad lives with you, doesn't live with me, he's still here, he's still in my life, you know what I mean? Still married, still, you know what I mean? Still my dad's here, you know what I mean? Present. So almost as if like, wow, I wonder what Marvin would do to kill to have an opportunity that I have, that I might be taking for granted based on my own journey that I've gone through, because it's not always a case where if dad's present then it means that's the best thing as well sometimes, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And, you know, even for my own journey with my father, like, you know, like, my dad's a typical Nigerian man. If I'm really honest, you know, like, the older I get, the more I respect him. It's so crazy, you know what I mean, because I can relate with all of you guys, you know, And I think we should talk on it as well, because I think that dads were always obsessed with what they can provide, i.e. what they could do for us. You know what I mean? So I can hallmark moments of like the crepes or Nintendo 64, Lego. Like, there's just the moments of where he did stuff for us, but then to connect with us, you know, how you doing, son? All that, they're very scarce or non-existent at all. You know what I mean, kind of thing. And you know, therefore, I think culture may come into play with that. I'm older now, so I'm like, you know what? My dad can only do what he saw, and then even with that, try to compensate a bit more and doing what maybe he didn't get. You know what I mean, kind of thing. So they were very determined about our education. They're determined about us. Anything we needed, they got for us. I can't sit here and say that at all. But it shows us, like you said, in the whole JD Sports Children's thing, like what you can get from me is not what we really want. I want you. You know what I mean, kind of thing. You want your time, your presence. Just want to be with you. You know what I mean, kind of thing. And I think like for all of us to be 4 black men from different ages, different lives, for us to all still have that mantra of like just presence over money and stuff. It speaks to like, a stage of manhood that we can all address of like, you're a father, I'm said to be a father, God willing, these guys will catch up and shoot some goals. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
How then do we like look up, how does that have an impact on our fatherhood journey now, being a father? Do you get what I'm saying, kind of thing now? Because like, I don't know, would you prefer to have a daughter rather than a son? Or did it impact you in those mindsets? Or was you very apprehensive about when I'm going to have kids? Did your own journey make you feel like, did it impact anything that you had towards how you viewed fathering your own children?
I think the only thing for me was I'd never want my daughter to feel how I felt growing up. But that's the only thing. I was like, for us, I wanted to have a healthy baby. Didn't mind if it was a boy or girl. I genuinely wasn't fussed. I just wanted to have a healthy baby. And in terms of my relationship with them, my dad's not a bad guy, innit? But how situations and circumstances, I don't want to say him, but situations and circumstances linked to him made me feel I would never want her to feel that way. So that's why I always say to my wife, you know what? Like, I would never even contemplate the idea of us being separated, being divorced. Obviously, because we're Christians first and foremost, but also how I experienced not having a dad in the household. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy in terms of how it made me feel. You know what I mean? I remember being in school one time and like having a fight in primary school. Or something like it was a long time ago, but I remember randomly bursting into tears.
Wow!
And then people were like, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" It's like, for all of you guys, you'll just be like, "Oh, you can get your old man to sort it." I can't do that. Actually, you knew I had white friends in primary school, and the old man. I remember it's like that. I can't do that. You know what I mean? So I think for me, it's just I remember those moments poignantly, and I never want my daughter to be in that kind of position. But to go back to one thing you said about, us saying, we just desire, rather than the gifts, but to be in the presence of our Father. Our Heavenly Father is exactly the same. In a sense, we're made in His image. And the Bible says, He inhabits in the praises of His people. So when he is praised, when he is worshipped, He is drawn towards that. And as human beings, we're exactly the same. We the way we long to be in God's presence, and God longs for us to be in His presence, is it's the same that our children will have for us, and we should have towards our children as well. At the end of the day, the best relationships aren't about the gifts and it's just about genuinely enjoying. And my wife often has to remind me that more than anything, like our daughter, she just wants your presence. She just wants you to be aware. Because certain times, if I'm rushing to get ready for work or whatever, like you haven't even realized she just put her hands out for you to hold her. But because I'm so track-minded of I got to jump on the train, get to work, I've missed it. And she's like, just make sure you're always present, because you don't want her to grow up even with you being in the house, but not being in the house.
Not being present, yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, that's my biggest thing. I'm still learning.
So what's deep?
Is being present.
I'll let you go after that. Like, it's mad how your wife was just highlighting moments.
Yeah.
And like even now thinking about my journey, thinking like anywhere that I could where I experienced rejection, it was just some key moments. Even at key ages, dare I say as well. And it's mad how, you know, maybe you're consistent everywhere else, but she remembers that moment when she stretched and dad just went boom. You know what I mean? And that's her own trauma. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Yeah. That's how simple it is, guys. You know, it's not always just like, you know, you do something mad. You know what I mean? It's mismanaged moments. And it's funny because then you mentioned like, you just had moments. And how like, even when you had the moments, it wasn't enough. So it's almost as if like you can be present, but we miss moments. It could be equal, just as bad as not being present, but having moments. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost the merging of the two. You know what I'm saying? Once again, like two different paradigms, but at the same time, like the moments and the presence have to realign. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So as you actually were sharing, I was thinking that's so deep because, you know, she made me remember that one thing, but you're like, but yeah, Monday to Wednesday, you know, you know what I mean, kind of thing. You know what I mean, kind of thing. And I'm being careful because I'm not trying to push perfection or anything here, guys. But I'm trying to show us how much, like, you know, is how we manage these key moments and how intentional are we being present. You know what I mean, and how we cultivate that as a habitual lifestyle now. You know, because I think that's only probably residue for us as men. Like if we habitually be like, you know, I'm going to put them to bed. I'm going to do certain things that can create a momentum in their lives where they not that he was there, but they felt. You know what I mean? Me, you know, us being there kind of thing. So I know you wanted to ask a question.
Oh, just then?
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question from the perspective of, so with, you were talking about your daughter, etc. And I think you touched on it earlier in terms of at this point of life, like as life has gone on, you start to respect your dad a bit more. Like getting ready to be a father, you've been a father now for 20 months. Has that changed your perspective in any way towards your father in terms of some of the things he maybe did? So like, you know, getting married maybe, that could be a point where you realise, boy, this marriage thing's not easy. You know what I mean? You know what? It's not easy. I can kind of see maybe, you know, I can understand. You know, kind of understand how things, okay, cool. Not in all cases, but, you know, sometimes it brings a perspective change on things. Like, have you had that? And has that helped your relationship with your father in any kind of way? Has it affected it? Like, to both of you?
I think 100% I have.
Okay.
I think two things. I think it's made me respect single mothers so much more. So much more. And my wife's got a couple of friends that are single mothers. They're like, how on earth they do this? One person up. I don't understand. Like literally, I don't understand how to do it. Or let me just take single parents, because there are some dads where it's just like, I don't understand. So it's made me kind of more aware. And then, you know, it sounds mad when you read about a parent leaving their child outside a fire station or wherever, and you're like, how could they do that? Da, 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 da. Of course, I would never do that. But it shifted my mentality to understand how someone gets to the point where they feel like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean? And let me give them to someone else who perhaps can do a better job. Definitely, I can sympathize with that individual now. In terms of my dad, I think it's helped me to understand it. It's not, and it hasn't, because his situation wasn't necessarily, he didn't leave me. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I've learned to understand. Him and my mum didn't work out, so they separated. He was still in the UK, but obviously he had to leave, because if he didn't leave, he probably would have ended up at Her Majesty's pleasure. You know what I mean? So those were the choices. We all understand in our culture. 100%. You know, our grandparents would be like, nah, you're off, you're going Caribbean, you're going Africa, wherever it is. So then once I kind of learned more, I realized actually you didn't leave me. You just were a bit dumb. So you like, I was kind of like collateral in it, collateral damage in the situation that you had to leave your son. So then it's been difficult to kind of see the correlation between fatherhood for me and that, because it wasn't like, oh, this is hard, so I'm out. But then at the same time, more generally, I think it's helped me to demonstrate a bit more grace, just in general towards him. But I think that was a part of the journey that was happening anyway. But then seeing how he has stepped up in my later years as a dad and tried to be as hands-on as possible, and as a grandfather as well. You know what I mean? And it's difficult. I think what's also difficult for him is that obviously I had a daughter, my younger brother had a daughter, like a month apart. But then obviously he sees that grandchild all the time because they're in Canada. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, he is very intentional about how's my daughter doing, FaceTime and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So then when you see stuff like that and you can see someone trying to own their wrongs and right them, then it's easier to be gracious. You know what I mean? It's easier to be gracious at the same, and I'm not the easiest person to communicate with. So sometimes I'll have the emotional intelligence to realize, okay, this is the conversation you want to have. I'm going to shut it down. I'm changing it. I'm changing the topic. I'm doing something. So I know for a fact there's been times when he would have wanted to go into it. And I've been, nah, we're not doing it. Nah. You know what I mean? But I think, but in my head, the fact that it seems like you want to go into it, it's kind of like it's enough, innit? Even though I'm shutting it down, the fact you want to, for me, it's enough.
Why did you shut it down?
That's a question, bro.
Nah, and I think it's that fear element of what's gonna come out of this conversation. You know, like we're good now, we get on, like just allow it. Don't spoil it. I think it's that fear element of actually, if we really get into this, what's gonna become unraveled within me, and can I control my emotions in that moment? I think that's what it is, strongly, and I think it's one of the things that trying to keep that all together, rather than being in a vulnerable position where, you know, tears, snot, words come out, and that is like, I think again, I think that's a level of immaturity. If I'm totally honest, that's definitely a level of immaturity and a journey I'm on.
That's real, yeah, that's real. That's a perfect question, bro. You know what I'm saying? Because it's almost as if now, quote unquote, you're without excuse of like the opportunity you have to actually grow and heal through this thing, because now it's dad's making the move, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So, and it's almost as if now for yourself now, because you know what, the fear is legitimate, because once again, it's an unknown area of where you don't even know how this is going to. So the easy thing to do as a man, and we all do it in different ways, is just be like, come on. Pause, press brakes, open the door, you see you later kind of thing, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And I guess once again, you spoke about before, like the whole element of now being strong has to coincide with the vulnerability of accepting weakness. Yeah.
And I think for me, because my dad's proud of me in the sense of it, like, you know, and okay, yeah, you know, my he's got a good career. You know, he's a Christian. It was quite funny one time. My dad was like, my dad's not Christian. He's like, you should come to Canada. You make a lot of money, you know. He's like, you make a lot of money preaching. Like, well, you trying to be my agent or something. But we know North America is very different. But he's proud. You know what I'm saying. He's proud of the man I've become. And then sometimes it's like, if we get into it, and I really open up about how I feel, are you still going to be proud of your son? You know what I mean?
And do you feel like it's going to take you? It's going to take you too far back now that we're at this place where you're hearing proud of you and all this sort of stuff. Do you feel like it's going to take? Do you feel like the unraveling is going to shake the whole thing?
I think it is more for me. It's a illogical fear. Okay. Because I think there's nothing that could come out of a conversation that's going to make him not be proud. But it's the idea of he has a idea of perfection's the wrong word. But he sees his son and he could be like, yeah, you know, this is my son, you know, he's done well, he's accomplished this, blah, 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 blah. He's got things together. You know, when you have that conversation, then all of a sudden people see you for who you really are, and then you're now thinking what they now thinking of me. Sometimes it's easier for people to like a false you than get to know the real you, no matter how close they are. You know what I mean?
Not to turn this into like a therapy session, but if it's therapeutic, then okay. Do you know what I mean? If it is therapeutic, then okay.
It's therapeutic.
I'm interested to know, and I'm happy for us to go in whatever direction. But do you feel that the relationship with your father is such? I mean, the answer seems obvious, but I don't want to presume. Do you feel that the relationship with your father is such that it's not safe for you to be the genuine, vulnerable you? Or do you feel that, like you said before, it's not safe enough to unmask the perception you feel he has of you?
For me, again, I think it's illogical. I honestly do think it's safe enough.
Okay, cool. Fair.
But I think my fears is internal. It's illogical, and it's not just with my dad. To an element, it can come out of my marriage. To an element, it can come out of other relationships as well. You know what I mean? So I think it's purely illogical. But then knowing something and actually acting upon it,
Two different things. 100%.
You know, it's self-preservation.
Yeah.
You saw it in the garden.
Yeah.
First thing they did, covered their nakedness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then we blamed, it was the woman you gave.
So the question was, so with your process of, all right, about to be a father, you know, married, etc., has it allowed you to look back and change your perspective on some of the things that maybe you had a negative viewpoint on of your father? And has it maybe even helped your relationship with your father? Because I think you touched on the fact that you even respect your dad a bit more now.
I respect him so much more when I ran. I look back and I think, cause we have to contextualize our parents' life, guys. Like, they had me quite young. I can't remember, it was like early 20s, like 22, 20 something. Immigrants. Like, coming here, like, you have to contextualize it properly. Coming here from Niger, you know, having to do night shift, get a new degree because their degree does not equivalent. Get masters, like doing, like the other day we were sharing with me and Susan, like, yeah, you know, I remember when I used to do night shifts, and then he had to come home and take me to nursery and then sleep in hours between, pick me up and had to go back to work. Cause mum was working during the daytime, so like he said there were times he oversleep and forget to pick me up. Like, he's working night shift, isn't he? So he had to go to his work day, so. They grinded and still go to school, did masters, did everything, like, and like having memories of all those sort of things there, and like for us, I don't think they were present enough for us to feel like, yeah, mum and dad were there. But I think for me, like, there were just probably moments where that I needed that affirmation, or there were things that I was looking for, and that it was responding with rejection. So because I never really knew what it was between me and my dad's relationship growing up, except that I was a bad read. I don't feel you get beats or whatever of that. And obviously they were just very much pro education more than like, you know, love you son kind of thing. That wasn't until I got saved, you know, where God had to highlight key moments in my childhood that really affect and rocked me. I know, looking back, there were probably like minor moments, but there were precious moments that shaped me completely, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So looking back, and the reason why I say I respect him much more now is because I'm an adult now, doing what he was doing and realizing how much disadvantage he had and how he was able to pull through and how much more opportunity that I have, and realizing that, right, this is still hard. So you got to think about it. I grew up in Hackney, Prenby Estate, 2-bedroom flat, and my parents were the parents that would let the uncles come over and stay to come and get on the feet, or people would send their kids to my dad and they'd put them through school. So our house was always ran, like 10 man in a 2-bedroom flat. I don't know how we did it, but then to see that from a 2-bedroom flat to like a 4-bedroom detached house in Purley, I've subconsciously just watched my dad always level up. And not just him, he's been friends with like 30 other guys from uni, all black men, seeing them all go through the same process of having flats to big houses now with their kid. I've just always been surrounded by men that always leveled up. So now when I'm older, I'm now getting married, going through my whole thing, I'm thinking, right, like, these men were able to do that in a much more hostile work environment. So now that we're getting all this representation, all this equality stuff, back then they had to just grind, you know what I mean, go through it. So now that I'm older, I'm thinking, I said in my brother's speech, like, they all came in and said, you know, you guys are my real Romans, because I saw you guys grind from bottom to the top and seeing you guys doing really well. So I think now that's really just living the life that they lived and realizing, wow, as a second, generation immigrant who's had much more opportunity than I am, still finding it hard, but I know I can do it because these guys did it with much more harder obstacles. So that's the real answer I can give to that question. So for my dad, I can see now through wisdom that he did the best that he could do and he did it well. You know what I mean? I have to give my hats off to him, literally. So I'm realizing that there's some stuff that I want to do that he was able to do. And I'm thinking, well, this definition of grind, it's pops, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So, but growing up, there would have been all the stuff that I felt because I was still dealing with the, you know, with the rejection or acceptance or, you know, all the other things I was going through as a young, you know, teenage boy. So that would be my answer, you know, to your question, literally. So yeah, so I just wanted to round it off with this last question. I'm going to be very cheeky, but I want you guys to give me a concise answer with this question. Like, if your dad was here, you know, is there anything, one thing that you would want to say or ask him? Have I triggered some good?
Can we do both? So one thing you would say and one thing you would ask him.
Okay, cool.
Can you do that?
Yeah, you can do that.
Korede, you can start.
Oh my goodness, where do I even begin? There's one thing I could say. I would say, what would I say? Biological father. I would say, thanks for the study Bible. He gave my family a study Bible for, I think, for me and my sister's birthday because they're close together. So he gave us a study Bible, John MacArthur study Bible. Think of him what you will.
Johnny Mac as well.
Johnny Mac, man. Good old Johnny Mac. So that helped me a lot when it came to my growth in theology, which has informed my living. So that was, and I did ask him about that and he didn't. Anyway, we're being concise. What would I actually ask him? I have asked him this. I think to ask him about things about the past would be helpful, but I'm more concerned about his future. And so my thing would be to ask him whether he's still in the faith. And I know that he is. And so, yeah, that would be my question. Not to be spooky, but at this point, like, because I am who I am by God's grace, yeah, I can ask other questions, but I just want to know he's okay and he will make it to the kingdom of God. Outside of that, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. No, because time is short, we can't answer any questions, right? That's cool. That's good.
I want to ask you so many questions, bro. But it's all right.
It's all right. Next time.
All right, so one thing I'd ask, I would say to my dad, I appreciate that you tried. Wow. That's what I'd say. Okay. I appreciate you tried. You weren't perfect, and you aren't perfect, but I can appreciate where you have tried. And now I'd give him that. And then one thing I would ask him is, what advice would you give me to help me be the best husband and father that I need to be from your perspective, like just life-wise? Because we've done the past, so we've gone over that quite a bit, fortunately. So what could I do? And if I'm being very real, if I'm being raw for the sake of we're doing Photo Podcast a bit, so let me give it for the people. But what the heart of that question really is still, to an extent, what advice would you give me to not make the mistakes you made? That's really the heart of the question. If I'm being real, but I'm just framing it nice. But it's not to make the mistakes you made when it came to being a husband and father. That would be my questions from, and then the conversation can go from there.
Leondre, I'll go last.
I think it's similar to Marvin. Just thank you for like the efforts you've made in terms of trying to rectify like where you went wrong in the younger years. Like it's appreciated. Like, you know, in terms of a question, I don't know. The question in my mind is, if you could go back, what would you do differently? I think that would be like, because that shows me the level of self-reflection that may have taken place. And of course that can't happen, but one of the big things that I've had is, and I think I've said this to my dad, I can't remember, or I thought it, I don't want the mistakes he's made with me for him to make my younger brother. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because there's, 13 years between us. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. So my prayer is, my hope, that, and I think that's where I've got to, is the relationship we never had, I want them to have. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which I believe they have in a much greater way than I did. But that's it for me now. Not for me, I think is, the ship sailed. But I feel that of my younger brother being younger, obviously is more in need of a good dad, than I am. So the question would be about, okay, have you really reflected on when you went wrong with me to make sure that you don't repeat it with my younger brother?
What's deep? You know what's deep, guys, yeah, is that like, even what I would say to him is funny how we all say the same way, but that's generally what I thought. Like thank you, like, for what you've done. And I find it deep that all of us are even saying thanks, because I think it kind of shows a level of growth and grace that we all possess that we're not able to extend, you know what I'm saying, to our parents. Yeah, it does, we're actually Christians. No, literally, like, if I say to my dad, like, you're a good man, thank you. You tried, literally, like, you did well. And I think one thing I'll ask him is probably like, why didn't you say I love you enough? Or at all? Probably that, That's the only question that comes to mind, really. Imagine we're only hugging now that we're older. I don't need your hugs now. I think I heard my dad say, uni, I got into the uni, and they're like, I'm so proud of you. And even that wasn't even voice, it was by text. And that broke me down, you know what I mean? Because those are words I didn't hear enough, and that I was yearning to hear, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So, and maybe I can't lie, I didn't do enough things to be proud of anyway, but at the same time, it's just like, sometimes it's grace, innit? It's being able to offer something that someone else doesn't deserve, but because, you want to add value to their lives, you know what I mean? So I would ask him, why didn't you say I love you, enough or at all, you know what I mean? So yeah, but man, this has been deep. I wish I had more time. I got questions for Korede, I got questions for you. I was like, but guys, thank you so much. But not another time, I'm saying this has been awesome. It's been excellent, and I hope you guys also have enjoyed this session that we've had. Like you said, we wanted more time to divulge, but what we said tonight, so far has definitely been substantial enough for you guys to take. So please, if you do have any more questions for us, comment below. We might do an Instagram live, or in our next episodes, we may, have a chance to answer these questions. But Mandem, thank you so much for your transparency, for your time, for your wisdom, for your story. I value each one of you, and I really want to thank you for giving your time being here today, man. So blessings, man. 412 Mandem. Ayokunu, Forming Up Podcast. Thank you for being with us. See you soon.